subscribe to Dr. Nightmare channel now.
They vanish after the fireworks. I grew up in a small town in northern Pennsylvania, a quiet place with more deer than people, and a July 4th celebration that was the biggest event of the year. They called it the Boom Bash. Every summer, families poured into the open fields behind the old high school to set up lawn chairs and coolers, and as night fell, fireworks lit up the sky in reds, blues, and golds. It was one of those traditions that made people feel like nothing in the world could touch them. Until last year. That's when the disappearances started. The weird thing was, it wasn't random. It was always during the finale. You know, that part of the fireworks show when everything's going off at once and the crowd is cheering and no one's really watching anything clearly. It was like a veil dropped over the field and people were just erased. The first one was a teenage girl named Elsie Benton, 16. She was there with her boyfriend and some friends. They were sitting near the back, just past the light tower. Right before the finale, her boyfriend turned around to grab a soda from the cooler. He said it took less than 10 seconds. When he turned back around, Elsie was gone. At first, everyone assumed she just wandered off or got into a fight and left. It wasn't until 2 days later, when her phone was found face down in the middle of the field, still powered on, that people started to worry. It wasn't cracked or wet, and there were no footprints around it. It was like it had been placed there by someone with gloves, or no one at all. That year, people whispered, said maybe she ran away, said maybe it was just a one-time thing. But the next year, it happened again. And this time, I was there. The July air was thick with humidity. You could hear the bugs buzzing under the crowd's conversation and the clinking of glass bottles being slipped into plastic bags. My friend Rachel had just come back from college, and we were determined to make the most of our summer. The Boom Bash was supposed to be just the start of it. We got there early to find a good spot, right on the crest of the little hill by the parking lot. You could see everything from there. The stage, the field, the entire night sky. I remember feeling safe. Even when the sun started to slip behind the trees and the cicadas went quiet. Even when the first firework hissed into the sky and cracked open like a gunshot. It wasn't until the finale started that I felt it. A kind of pressure. Not pain, just this low buzz in my chest that made my skin tighten. I looked at Rachel. She was clapping. Laughing. She didn't feel it. I scanned the crowd, but everyone else looked the same, cheering, shouting, filming on their phones. And then I saw him. A man in a blue windbreaker, standing absolutely still. Not blinking, not watching the sky, just staring directly across the crowd toward the woods. I was going to nudge Rachel, say something, but when I turned to her, she was gone. At first, I thought maybe she just moved closer to the stage, but the way she disappeared didn't feel right. She hadn't stood up. I would have seen it. She hadn't even shifted. I stood up, heart pounding, turning in every direction, calling her name over the fireworks, but no one seemed to notice. The sky was exploding, but I couldn't hear any of it. My chest was buzzing again, worse this time. I ran toward the crowd, trying to push through, shouting her name. I stumbled, almost fell into a cooler, and when I looked up, she was there. Standing next to the man in the windbreaker. Her face was blank, her eyes wide and unblinking, like she was trapped in a trance. And just as I opened my mouth to scream, they stepped backward, into the trees, and disappeared. I chased after them, of course, but by the time I got to the edge of the woods, they were gone. Like they had melted into the darkness, or had never been there. I called the police. They showed up after the show ended. They asked me the same questions they'd asked the other girl's boyfriend 2 years earlier. Had we been drinking? Was she depressed? Was this a prank? No, it wasn't. I told them about the man, the windbreaker, his eyes, the way Rachel didn't blink. They looked at each other, said nothing, and wrote it down. But I could tell they didn't believe me. The next morning, Rachel's phone was found in the same place Elsie's had been, dead center of the field, screen wiped clean, no texts, no photos, just one note in the reminders app. Don't look at the light. That message still makes my stomach twist, because there was no light where she disappeared. No light, except the fireworks. I stopped going after that, stopped showing up, but I couldn't stop looking into it. I searched old newspaper archives, went back a few decades, and what I found still makes me sick. Every 10 years, starting from 1963, someone has vanished during the finale of the Boom Bash. Not every year, only some years. Always during the finale, always a young person, and always near the back of the crowd. The weirdest part? The people who vanished were all connected. Siblings, friends, roommates? Not random. Like someone was following the lines between them, picking them off, one by one. This year, the town canceled the Boom Bash, said it was due to budget cuts. But everyone knew. People talked about it in gas stations and grocery lines. There was fear in the air, thick and still, like smoke after a spark. But canceling the show didn't stop it, because someone else hosted fireworks that year, in their backyard, a big setup, lots of kids. They disappeared too. I don't know who or what is doing this. I don't know why. But I know this. It comes with the fireworks. It hides in the chaos. And it takes who it wants. When the sky goes boom, some people vanish. And no one ever finds them.
The house with no memories. It started on the 4th of July, one of those humid, endless nights on the Jersey Shore where the sky glows with heat lightning and everything feels just a little off, even before anything goes wrong. Jimmy, my childhood friend turned nightlife mogul, had invited me and our other buddy Ryan to a massive party he was hosting. It was supposed to be the biggest event his company had ever thrown. High-profile venue, famous DJ, full VIP access, the kind of thing people begged to be on the list for. For us, it was free. No wristbands, no lines, just show up and enjoy the ride. The drive down was uneventful, a blur of beach traffic, bad gas station coffee, and bass-heavy playlists meant to hype us up. We got there 4 hours before the doors opened. While Jimmy ran around directing his crew and making sure every detail was perfect, Ryan and I did what we always did, found the alcohol, and started the countdown to blackout. By the time the venue filled up, we were deep into the kind of drunk where time folds in on itself. Music thundered through the walls like it was alive. The lights made everything blur at the edges. Faces came and went. Drinks kept refilling themselves. The world became liquid. Then the girls appeared, Marcella and Gianna. They didn't fit the scene. Not exactly. Too elegant, too composed. While everyone else stumbled around shouting and laughing, they moved like they were gliding, untouched by the chaos. Marcella had this kind of cold beauty, like marble. Gianna was warmer, but her smile never quite reached her eyes. They told us they'd seen us earlier, that we looked like we knew how to have fun, that we should come with them. Gianna handed me a drink. Marcella gave one to Ryan, and even though every instinct I had was buried under a mountain of liquor, something in me paused. It was the way Gianna was looking at me. Not flirtatious, not playful, just watching. But I drank anyway. We followed them out the back of the venue, past the crowds, down a narrow boardwalk that cut across the dunes. The beach stretched out before us like an endless shadow. The moon hung low and huge over the water, casting everything in blue-gray light. We walked in silence for what felt like forever. The girls stayed just ahead of us, whispering to each other in a language I couldn't place. Finally, Marcella stopped and pointed. "There," she said. "That's home." The house stood alone on a stretch of private beach, tucked into the dunes like it had grown out of the sand itself. Black glass, pale stone, sharp edges. It didn't look like a beach house. It looked like a museum. No lights on, no signs of life, just waiting. We walked inside. The air changed the second the door closed behind us. It was cold, unnaturally cold, like the house hadn't seen sunlight in years. Everything smelled foully metallic, like wet copper and stone. The interior was minimalist but unnerving. Sculptures on pedestals, furniture that looked like it had never been touched, walls that didn't feel like they had ever heard laughter. Ryan and Marcella vanished almost immediately, disappearing down one of the dark hallways. That left me alone with Gianna. She sat across from me in a sleek white armchair and stared. I tried to speak, tried to joke or flirt or do anything to fill the silence, but my mouth felt heavy, like I was pushing words through mud. She leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you know why you're here?" I blinked. "What?" She tilted her head. "This house, it only finds people who are ready to forget." I laughed, thinking she was being dramatic, but something about the way she said it stuck. Then everything tilted. Not like the room spun, but like gravity shifted. The lights dimmed. Not slowly, not naturally, but as if someone flipped a switch inside my skull. My body felt loose. My hands tingled. I tried to stand and couldn't. Gianna was still staring. And then, nothing. A blackout. Not the usual kind, not the sloppy, regretful, drunk kind. A total erasure, like someone had wiped a hard drive clean. When I opened my eyes, I was outside. Daylight, burning sun, blinding. I was lying in a patch of bushes off the side of a 2-lane highway I didn't recognize. No beach in sight, no ocean, no house, just pine trees and asphalt. Panic hit like a freight train. I staggered to my feet, dizzy, nauseated. No blood, no injuries, but no memory. Not of leaving the house, not of walking, not of anything after sitting down with Gianna. I wandered until I found a 7-Eleven half a mile down the road. I begged the clerk to use his phone, called my sister. One of the numbers I still remembered. That's when Ryan walked in. He looked just as wrecked as I did. Dirty, confused, wearing someone else's clothes. No phone, no wallet. We didn't speak at first. We just stared at each other like ghosts who'd seen the same afterlife. Then we talked, compared stories. Same experience, same memory gap, same blackout. He had no idea what happened. He blacked out in the house with Marcella, woke up alone in a ditch, found his way here. The police were called. They didn't believe us. To their credit, they listened, but they assumed we were drunk, disoriented, suggested we wandered off, lost our things, maybe got robbed by locals. It happens, they said. We asked them to check the house, the one Marcella claimed was hers. They refused. So we went back ourselves. We retraced our steps along the beach, past the boardwalk, past the spot where the ocean sounded wrong. And we found it. The house. It looked the same, black glass, sharp corners, except now it looked like empty. Not unoccupied, empty, lifeless, soulless. We knocked. An old man answered. He lived there alone, he said. Had for over 20 years. No Marcella, no Gianna, no guests, no parties. We described the inside. He shook his head. That's not what the inside of this house looks like. He let us peek in. The layout was wrong. The furniture was normal. No sculptures, no pedestals, no freezing air. We thanked him and walked away in silence. The horror didn't hit until later. Back home, I checked my phone records. My phone had sent messages while I was blacked out. To Jimmy, to friends, even to my parents. The texts were casual, friendly, as if nothing had happened. One said we went home early. Another said we were fine. One even said, "We're crashing at a buddy's house. See you tomorrow." None of those texts made sense. They weren't lies. They weren't typos. They were placeholders, words to fill in the gaps, as if something or someone was making sure nobody noticed we'd disappeared. Ryan's phone had the same pattern, casual messages, sent at the same times, from his number, from his voice. But he never sent them. Neither did I. We never found Marcella or Gianna, never found a trace of the party. Jimmy said we vanished for almost 18 hours. He assumed we'd gone off with someone, that we were just being idiots. Maybe we were. But something happened in that house, something that took us apart and put us back together wrong. And the worst part? There are still entire hours missing from my memory. Sometimes, at night, I dream of that house, of Gianna's eyes, of a door I never saw. And in those dreams, I hear a voice whispering, "You chose to forget. You chose to stay." Then I wake up, but I'm not always sure I ever left.
The parade that no one remembers. I moved to Millbrook in early June. Quiet town. Pretty boring, honestly. Not much to do, not many people my age, and the kind of place where everyone knows everyone else's business. The only thing people seemed excited about was the 4th of July parade. I heard about it my first week from my landlord, Mrs. Caldwell. She was this hunched old woman with clouded eyes and a shaky voice that still carried weight when she wanted it to. She said, "Don't make plans for the 4th, dear. Everyone goes to the parade. Everyone." When I asked what made it so special, she just smiled, like a memory had passed over her face. They don't let it be forgotten. At the time, I thought she meant tradition, small town pride and all that. But now I know she meant something else entirely. The week leading up to the 4th, the whole town transformed. Bunting and flags covered every storefront. Kids painted stars on the sidewalks with red and blue chalk. Even the abandoned buildings were decorated, though I never saw who was doing it. It was eerie how perfect it looked, like something out of a postcard. But the weird part? No one ever talked about previous years. Every time I brought it up, asked someone what last year's parade was like, or how long it lasted, or who usually marched, they would smile and change the subject. Even online, there was nothing. No photos, no videos, no posts. Just a line on the town's website. Annual Millbrook Parade, July 4th, starts at 3 p.m., attendance expected. That's all it said. No flyer, no list of events, nothing. I decided to go, obviously. I didn't want to be the only one who didn't show up. Plus, I was curious. On the morning of the 4th, the town was unusually quiet. Too quiet. It wasn't until around 2:30 that people started to emerge. Every street emptied into Main Street, like a river of bodies, all wearing white. Not red, not blue, just plain white clothes. Men, women, children, even the babies. Some held little flags, some carried candles. No one spoke. I stood on the curb near the old bakery and watched as they lined up on either side of the road, all facing forward like they were waiting for something sacred. Then right at 3 p.m., the air changed. It felt thick, dense, like it was full of static, and the parade began. But it wasn't like any parade I'd ever seen. There were no floats, no music, no laughter. The first to come down the street was a man in a black suit. He walked slowly, holding a tattered American flag upside down. His eyes were glassy, almost unblinking, and his skin looked strong, grayish, like he hadn't seen the sun in years. Behind him came a group of children, marching in perfect unison, their faces blank, no smiles, no excitement. Each one held a balloon that looked like it was filled with smoke instead of helium. Then came the marchers, hundreds of them, all dressed in white, all barefoot. Some looked confused, others looked hollow. That's when I noticed something. They weren't from town. I recognized nearly everyone in Millbrook. That's what happens when you move somewhere so small. But these people? I'd never seen them before. Not once. And the townsfolk? They watched, silent, still. I turned to ask the man beside me if he knew what was going on. But when I looked at him, his eyes were wide and full of tears. He whispered, "Don't move. Don't be seen." Then he looked away. My heart started to race. That's when I noticed something else. No one had phones. Not a single camera, not a single screen. No one even glanced down. It was like they didn't dare. And I began to understand. This wasn't a celebration. It was a ritual. Then the last part of the parade came. A carriage, wooden, rotting, pulled by 4 horses with sunken skin and eyes that glowed red in the shadows. Inside the carriage sat a figure. Tall, thin, dressed in robes stitched together with flags. Its face was hidden beneath a veil, but I could feel it staring at me. At me! Everyone around me bowed their heads. I didn't. I don't know why. Fear, maybe, or disbelief. And that was the moment everything shifted. The figure raised one long skeletal arm and pointed right at me. The crowd gasped, then went dead silent. My vision blurred, the world tilted. I felt something sharp behind my eyes, like a spike being pushed in. People started whispering, words I couldn't understand. The air turned cold and shadows stretched longer than they should. Then, the figure lowered its arm, and the parade continued. But I knew something had changed. They knew I didn't belong. After it ended, the townspeople went home in silence. No one spoke, no one looked at each other, just shuffled off like sleepwalkers. I stumbled back to my apartment, locked every door, pulled the blinds. I didn't sleep. The next morning, the town was normal again. People were smiling, laughing. Fireworks were being sold on corners. Kids played in sprinklers. I asked a guy at the grocery store if he went to the parade. He looked confused. What parade? I asked the cashier. She shrugged. Think we skipped it this year. I asked Mrs. Caldwell. She smiled, just like before. They don't let it be forgotten. Then she shut the door in my face. I tried leaving town the next day. Didn't work. Every road I took led me back to Main Street. Even the highway twisted. The GPS glitched. I drove for 2 hours and still ended up right where I started. Millbrook doesn't let people go. Not after they've been seen. Now it's July 3rd again. Tomorrow's the parade, and I can feel it already. My skin itches, my teeth ache, my reflection flickers when I pass mirrors. And this morning, I woke up wearing white. There was a note on my kitchen table, written in black ash. It said, "You'll march this year." And the worst part? A part of me wants to march. The drums are already playing somewhere deep beneath the town. Can you hear them? Boom, boom, boom. Never stop in a town where no one remembers the parade. Because sometimes the past doesn't want to be remembered. It wants to be repeated.
The fireworks show that never ended. I wasn't supposed to be in Granger that weekend. It was one of those last-minute things. My cousin's baby shower got canceled, my boss gave me the Friday off, and my girlfriend and I were having one of those cooling-off weeks. So I booked a cabin on a whim. Middle of nowhere, barely on the map. Granger, Pennsylvania. I just wanted to sleep late, make a campfire, and ignore everyone for a while. But what I got instead was the loudest, longest, and most horrifying July 4th of my entire life. The cabin was old. Real old. Not in a cozy way, in a no one stayed here in years kind of way. There were claw marks on the back door frame. Something had been chewing the window ledges, but I figured bears or raccoons. I didn't care. I wasn't there for luxury. The town itself was just a few minutes down the road. One gas station, one diner, one general store that closed at 5 p.m. sharp. And everyone I met there, weird. Not mean exactly, but wary. The kind of people who smile with their mouths and not their eyes. One woman at the diner asked me how long I was staying. When I said just the weekend, she paused and said, "Then you'll only see it once." I didn't know what she meant, but I would soon. The first 2 nights were uneventful. No cell signal, barely any internet, just long hikes and even longer naps. But on the night of July 3rd, just after 10 p.m., I heard it. A single firework burst, then another, and another. I figured the town was starting their celebration early. I stepped out onto the back porch with a beer and looked up at the sky. But what I saw didn't make sense. The fireworks were coming from deep in the woods, not the town. Bright flashes of red and gold and blue, too perfect, too symmetrical. And they were close, too close. They lit up the trees in flashes, revealing nothing but shadow and smoke. And the sound? It was deafening, louder than any fireworks I'd ever heard. So loud the porch shook, my beer bottle rattled against the railing. And mixed between the booms, I could have sworn I heard something else. Screaming. Faint, but sharp, cutting through the explosions like a whisper in a thunderstorm. I told myself it was just excited kids, some family camping nearby. That's all.
But when I looked out again, the bursts had stopped, and the woods were pitch black. No more sound, no more light. Just silence. Too sudden. I went back inside, locked the door, but I didn't sleep well, because around 3 a.m., something knocked on the window. 3 times. Slow. Deliberate. I didn't look. I just lay there holding my breath until the sun came up. The next day, the town was buzzing. Everyone was outside, decorating porches and stringing up flags. It looked like something out of a 1950s postcard. When I asked the man at the diner if there had been a show in the woods the night before, he gave me a strange look. He said, "That wasn't the show." Then he walked away. By nightfall, I was back at the cabin, unsure if I should even stay. But the sun was setting and something about the air felt wrong. Heavy, static charged, like a storm was coming, but there wasn't a cloud in the sky. Then, right at 9 o'clock, the fireworks started again. This time, from every direction. I stepped outside and froze, because the lights weren't just in the sky, they were in the trees. Explosions that didn't rise upward, but burst horizontally, lighting up the forest canopy like a war zone. And in those flashes, I saw things. Shapes. Figures. Just for a split second each time. People. Standing motionless between trees. Mouths open, eyes glowing. Some crawling. Some upside down. Some not human at all. I backed into the cabin and slammed the door. But it didn't help because now the booms were so loud that they made the glass windows bend inward. And those screams, they were real. Dozens, hundreds, like a crowd being burned alive just out of sight. I looked out through a crack in the blinds, and that's when I saw it. Something was moving towards me. Not running, not charging, just drifting. A human shape, completely black against the glowing bursts behind it. It didn't walk, it glided, like smoke on water. I ran to the back door, flung it open, and came face to face with a girl. She couldn't have been older than 12. Her face was pale, her dress was white, her hair was soaking wet, and in her hand she held a sparkler, still lit, but it didn't flicker like normal. It was perfectly still, burning in reverse, the sparks climbing downward. She whispered, "Don't go near the light." Then she stepped back and disappeared. I packed my bag in seconds and ran. Didn't care where, just away. The forest lit up around me with every firework. Each time I'd catch a glimpse of faces in the trees, watching, grinning, some hanging upside down from branches like possums, some walking alongside me, their heads tilted backwards in impossible angles. But none of them moved to stop me, because they didn't have to. The forest did that on its own. The path twisted, shifted, branches grabbed my sleeves like hands, and all the while, the fireworks kept going, non-stop, like they were fueling this nightmare. I broke through the tree line and made it to the town's edge, but it wasn't a town anymore. The streets were filled with people in perfect rows, all staring upward. None of them blinked, their mouths open, their skin blistering from the light above, because the fireworks weren't exploding in the sky now. They were exploding in the air above their heads. And with every blast, I saw pieces falling. Not ash, not paper, teeth, bones, fingers. But no one screamed, because the screams were coming from somewhere else, from under the town, from under the ground. I ran again, didn't stop until I hit the gas station. The doors were locked, the lights were off, but inside, I saw a man crouched in the corner, covering his ears. I pounded the glass until he looked up. When he saw me, he mouthed something I'll never forget. "They don't stop. Not until dawn." And he was right. I hid in a drainage pipe all night. The sky never went dark, the booms never stopped, but I stopped counting the hours because time didn't work right there. At some point, I must have passed out from the noise. When I woke up, it was silent. The sky was blue, the town was normal. No people, no scorch marks, no blood, just a faint smell of gunpowder in the air. I left Granger and never went back. That was 5 years ago. Every year since, on the night of July 4th, I don't sleep because I still hear them, those fireworks, even from hundreds of miles away. And between the explosions, I hear the screams. If you ever find yourself near a place that celebrates with silence the morning after, don't ask questions. Don't wait for the show, because some fireworks aren't meant to end.
The town that skipped July. When I first moved to Coldwater Hollow, I thought I was chasing peace. Small town, quiet woods, no traffic, no noise. I was wrong. Coldwater isn't peaceful. It's forgotten. And it has a secret they don't write down anywhere. Not on town records, not in welcome brochures, not in family stories. The people here don't celebrate the 4th of July. They vanish. Not like a vacation or a tradition. I mean, disappear. Houses emptied, shops shuttered, streets silent. Every year, on July 1st, they start closing their curtains. And by the time the 3rd rolls around, there's not a soul left. I thought they were just eccentric, but this year, I stayed. And now I understand why no one else ever does. It began with the sky. On the evening of July 3rd, a strange color rolled in across the clouds. Not red, not orange like a sunset. Violet. A deep, bleeding violet that looked painted by something not from this world. There was a low vibration in the air, like the sound of fireworks still in the barrel, but never fired. I sat on my porch with my dog Max, watching the sky flicker with static, and I swear, for just a moment, the moon blinked. Not a cloud, not a bird. The moon blinked. I should have left then, but curiosity, that's the real killer, isn't it? At midnight, I went for a walk. The entire town was dead quiet. I passed by the library, empty, the diner, abandoned. Even the police station had no lights, no cars, no officers. But the strangest thing, every home had a single candle burning in the front window. No one inside, just flickering flames glowing behind closed curtains. It was like they were leaving offerings. At 12:33 a.m., I reached the town square. There, standing completely still, were 12 scarecrows, each dressed in old American military uniforms. They hadn't been there the day before. Each one wore a different decade: 1776, 1812, 1865, 1917, 1944, all the way up to modern-day camouflage. Their eyes were made of polished stone, and they weren't just facing the square, they were facing me. I turned to go back to home, but the street behind me was gone. Not dark, gone. Like it had been erased from existence. There was nothing but blackness, not shadows, nothing. And then the drum began. Just one. A slow, deep thud, followed by the sound of boots on concrete. I spun around, but the square was empty. Then the scarecrows were gone. All 12 vanished. I backed toward the courthouse steps, my heart pounding so loud it muffled the drumbeat. And that's when I saw it. Out of the sky, it floated down like paper ash, a parade flyer. Old, burned at the edges, printed in red ink, it read, "The Unfinished Independence Day Parade, Coldwater Hollow, July 4th, 1876, canceled due to tragedy. 56 lost, never recovered." The rest of the words were smeared in a crimson I don't think was ink, and below the text, handwritten in shaky graphite, was a message. "We march for those who forgot us." Suddenly, every candle in the town lit brighter, and then they all blew out at once, like a great breath had swept through cold water. The ground beneath me shook. I turned and ran, but every direction I took led back to the square. Every road, every alley, every turn brought me back to the same spot. And each time I returned, another scarecrow had reappeared, marching now, not standing, marching. One had my face, one wore the shirt I'd been wearing just days ago. And when I shouted into the void, something answered, but not in words. It was like hundreds of people all trying to scream through cloth, layered, muffled, trapped. The voices filled the air like smoke, and one word kept repeating, "Join." I blacked out. When I woke, it was daylight, July 5th. The sky was blue, birds chirped, my street was back. People were walking dogs, drinking coffee, watering plants, like nothing had ever happened. I asked my neighbor, an older man with weathered skin and tired eyes, about where everyone had gone the night before. He looked at me and said, "You stayed, didn't you?" I nodded. He just shook his head. "We don't skip July, son. July skips us." That night, I found something outside my front door, a folded piece of cloth, an old parade sash. It was soaked in something dark and stitched with a name I didn't recognize, but the initials matched mine. So if you're ever driving through a small town in early July and you notice the streets a little too quiet, if you see candles in windows, if the sky turns violet and the moon starts to blink, keep driving. Because some towns don't celebrate the 4th. Some towns were never meant to.